Colleagues, welcome back to the Business Regulation Subcommittee. We thought we just had one bill. We have two bills we're going to be dealing with today. So Laura, take it away for the electrician's bill so we can explain that and move that one out expeditiously.
Chair Davis asked if the subcommittee would revisit House Bill 1262. He's been in contact with Senator McCray, who is the Senate sponsor on the electrician's bill. And the senator had requested that the committee basically strip off of the Senate bill the exemption from the worksite requirement for solar installers. So the chair of one of the subcommittees, he was recommending that the subcommittee move the bills, or that the House bill, and basically with the work group amendment, but not with the other amendment, creating an exemption from the worksite requirement.
Again, for all those that weren't listening, that our chairman, wink, wink, requested that we discuss, wink, wink, amending the bill and taking off that amendment. So do I have a motion? Do I have a motion? I need a motion. Lily, somebody?
I'll move.
Do I have a second? You guys are going to make this tough. I know the Republicans aren't going to help me. Veronica, do I have a second?
Everybody's on mute.
Second.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
All right, thank you. All right, now we have the discussion. Are you sharing your stuff, Laura?
I'm not. I can if you want me to.
No, you're fine. No, you're fine. That was me messing up.
I think essentially you would just be moving the work group, Delegate Adams' second amendment that brings in the work group.
Right. So we're basically passing a Republican amendment on a Republican bill. Come on, guys.
All right. So
Okay.
we're voting. Are we voting this?
We would be voting. We moved the amendment. I wanted to discuss it briefly before we voted it. This is chairman's recommendation that we strip one of the amendments, go forward with Delegate Adams' amendment.
I mean, I'll support the chairman's request. So you just call.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
This is HB 1262, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
All right. So at this point, I guess we just need to, it's been amended.
Move the amendment.
I
I
guess we
think
need to
that the proper way to go about it, I think, is to pretend that this is the first time we're taking up the bill. So someone should move the work group amendment of Delegate Adams and then
Chris?
move the bill as amended with that.
Gotcha.
All right. So move
Chris, do
the work group amendment.
Second.
I have a second?
Second.
All right, I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Are you opposed, Seth?
No.
Okay. All right. So now we have this House bill amended. Do I
I make a motion.
have a
Second.
second?
Second.
Okay. Now, do we have to take a roll call on this one, Laura?
If you could just raise your hands, that would be good.
All in favor of moving the bill as amended? Mark, you're voting green?
Delegate Dume, I don't know if that counts as your hand being up there.
She's not on the subcommittee, so she
Oh,
doesn't vote.
I'm just nosy,
Ex officio.
ex
That's
officio,
okay.
so I don't get to vote.
Okay, I thought we already voted it out.
You did.
The Senate version, that's different from ours, right?
No, well, so the chair asked the subcommittee to reconsider the amendments to the House bill, and then presumably we will take a sort of corollary action. And so the Senate bill, we would be stripping off the amendment for the solar installers, and then we would be adding on the work group amendment. So I can draft the amendment to conform the Senate bill, and then both the bills would be in the same posture.
Okay, so we're coming back to, okay.
Okay. So what are we doing next?
Oh, I don't know, maybe House Bill 581.
Has everybody had a chance to read the reprint?
Which one? There's like 4 reprints in the
The
email.
last one sent out.
Okay. There's a Volderama reprint. There's a at least
Dume's.
Yeah, Dume reprint.
This
The
Last one
first
from Laura.
3/23/21 at 11:07 p.m. Is that correct,
Okay.
Laura?
Let me see. This is why I almost didn't send out the other reprints, but I wanted you to have context for the information that I sent. So it is, the title of the attachment is HB 581 reprint for 324 meeting.
324 meeting.
Does it, what does it say on the very top, Laura?
The time, it's, the timestamp is
10:21.
10:21.
Is what?
I'm gonna share screen.
Is
So-
2321?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got
10:21
At 10:21 a.m.
Oh, Joy, it actually says that you've disabled screen sharing. Are you able to?
Joy? Joy? All right, yeah, you have to.
Is she
Joy?
with us?
Is, while we're figuring that out, is the 1021 timestamp, is that days?
No, that's the main set of reprint.
Okay, so the 1107 one is not the one to go off of, the one from 10/23/21 or 3/23/21?
3:24 at 10:21.
One.
Laura, shoot that to me again. I do not have one at 10:21 or even like within that time frame. So
God bless it. Yeah, I just
Sorry.
read I just poured over the wrong one. Son of a. All right, yeah, we're gonna pull this up to, I know.
All right, I'm gonna reply all. Let's see.
All right, you just said, okay, you just sent out the subcommittee materials. Is that part of that?
Yeah, so I'm gonna send it to Delegate Howard and the Delegate Wilson. Is there anyone else who needs it?
No, I got mine.
Okay.
I need it too.
Okay.
Joy, are you here yet? Let me call her.
Veronica and I are on our game right now. We got our homework here.
I just sent it, resent it.
thank you. I'm refreshing
So I
now.
think the issue is, it looks like Delegate Wilson and Delegate Adams are co-hosting, so that they would be able to share a screen, but I can't.
All right, let me murder Joy real quick. 1 second.
Oh, wait a minute. Did I press a button I shouldn't have?
No, you can't
Wait
make
a
me.
minute,
Laura,
press
I
me
don't
button.
have you as a co-host.
No, I'm not a co-host.
Okay, let me make Laura a co-host. I'm sorry, Laura.
It's
Could you
okay.
kick Delegate Adams off and make sure he has nothing to do with controlling this, please?
Okay, cool.
CT, I'm right down the hall from you, man. I'll have to come in like one of those WWF wrestlers and just show up in your screen.
Okay. If anyone didn't get the email that I just sent or doesn't have it, let me know and I'll send it out again. But this is what we're talking about here.
Yeah, got it.
Okay, so
So just tell me what page we just go to now, because I'm following you.
okay. So what I attempted to do with this reprint is put on paper some of the discussions the subcommittee's been having over the last week or so.
Okay,
This is not to say that this is in fact what you all want to do. This is just so that we could have something more concrete, since Delegate Wilson said that he wants to start voting on some things. So
okay, what page is this?
this is on page,
2.
Page 3 of 20.
yep,
3
so,
of 20. Okay, I got it.
okay.
3 of 20.
Actually, on page 2, just really quickly, this provision of the bill is struck. This is the part that would have set up a special enrollment period when we would be in an emergency as defined under the bill. The insurance carriers have said that the Maryland Health Benefit Exchange already has the authority during an emergency to establish a special enrollment period. And so it was sort of explained to me that it may be unnecessary to have this additional provision in the law when they already have the authority, and currently we are in a special enrollment period through that May 15th. So
Yeah.
Chair
I don't think
Davis
there's-
offered an amendment to take that out.
Yeah, I don't think there's an issue with that. All right.
This next part of the bill is struck as well. That removes the sort of enhanced pay stub information, because the subcommittee had talked about taking hazard pay out of the bill. So there's no need to reference hazard pay there. And now we're getting into the heart of the act. So in terms of definitions, the subcommittee had.
Wait a minute, back up. You went a little too fast for me. We did
Okay.
what with hazard pay?
We,
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
Delegate, we made it, as I've said before, even if the, two things, because this is a prospective bill. This bill isn't just about this COVID, it's about other catastrophic health crises. We can't, so we don't know what the feds, if anything, will do on the next one. We know been some monies that have made it downstream, but had we had a different Senate and a different president, we would not have got any state or local assistance. So those monies would not have been made available.
Okay, I got it.
Okay,
She just went too fast for me. Okay, I'm trying to.
okay, I got you.
Okay, go ahead. Yes, I
Yeah,
got
we
it
will
though.
be, that was not the provision of the bill that actually contained the hazard pay. That was just something that said a pay stub has to include information on the hazard pay. And so that
Okay.
was struck, but I wasn't glossing over hazard pay. We will be going through that as we walk through the reprint.
Okay,
But definitely let me know if I'm going too fast.
okay. You just went too fast for me, but that's okay. I'm gonna keep up with you. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay, so Delegate Wilson, do you want to have the subcommittee kind of stop at each point as we go and
I think it's time to make sure.
vote or ask questions, or how do you want
Yeah,
to go?
for each of the points, we've glossed over many times. You've done your, so let's make sure we find out, even if it's just to find out if there are sticking points, we can keep moving. But if there's, people ask questions, if it gets long-winded, we can always, skip over it and come back. But I
Okay.
find out what we can all agree on right now in this look,
Yeah,
and then come back to discuss the things that we still have problems with.
okay.
Okay,
So the subcommittee and work group discussed the definition of emergency and what triggers the requirements in the bill. And so there was discussion about limiting it to a catastrophic health emergency. And so I think it was 2 meetings ago, the vice chair had pointed out that there is an existing definition of catastrophic health emergency under the public safety article. So here, it just said an emergency means a catastrophic health emergency as defined under that other provision of law
Yeah.
that is the subject of an executive proclamation under the public safety article.
Right.
Can I, so let me just understand the mechanics of that. We have a health emergency. So the health department declares it. Then the governor has to have a proclamation, and then in separate proclamation, they have to have the subtitle become effective. In other words,
So-
it's not just a simple act, it's a act plus the governor has to, I don't know what the right word is for this, but he or she has to say the subtitle now applies through proclamation.
So the way that I understand this working is that it would take one executive action to trigger the requirements the way that it's drafted now. So a catastrophic health emergency is the basis for this executive proclamation under that section. So the governor could say, under this section of law, I am proclaiming that we are in a catastrophic health emergency. Period, full stop. This is now in effect, because the subcommittee had discussed not wanting to involve an agency or have some declaration beyond just the initial action by the governor. You all can frame it however you want, but as drafted in this reprint, the governor would proclaim a catastrophic health emergency, and then the governor would have to, state or federal agencies would decide which industries or employers are essential as to, who would be covered. But it would be one executive action to say, we're in an emergency. And so now we need to look at the requirements in this
Well,
law.
And I believe that was the goal and the will of the subcommittee to make it, instead of having multiple agencies have to say something and do something in order for this to take effect, to have basically the governor, in his verbiage, be able to kickstart this title. Am I incorrect on that, guys?
Well, I
That's
believe
correct.
that I believe that what Laura was describing was accurate in so much as it sounds like it takes an affirmative act of the governor to have the subtitle become effective.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
subtitle 3A of the public safety article is actually the governor's health emergency powers.
Yeah.
Correct. So, all right. So I think we're all in agreement on that, Laura.
Okay. All right.
We can skip all the specifics on that.
Okay. Essential employer. The definition is here. It's a person that employs an essential worker and includes a unit of state or local government, but really the important part is the section below 31602. As introduced, the bill said the requirements of the bill only apply to employers in these industries and sectors, and it listed out a number of them. And then there was a catch-all. Now, what this version says is the subtitle applies only to essential employers in industries and sectors that are identified by a state or federal agency as critical in responding to the emergency.
Yeah,
I don't know if that language is
that's
capturing.
exactly, no, I think that's exactly what we were looking for. Is again, we're not trying to identify or make it too prescriptive and allow the agencies who are responsible for it to be the ones to identify which specific areas are going to be affected depending on the nature of the health emergency.
So
So
can I
Did
ask
you
a
want
que-
to reference the proclamation? Because in the governor's proclamations, the early, I guess all of them, governor actually identified. I think state or federal agency is fine, but I just wondered if we should say or included in the executive proclamation.
Or as identified by proclamation.
Yeah, something to that effect.
I think actually in this pandemic, it was interpretive guidance from the governor. So perhaps we could
Oh,
more
I see.
generally,
You're right.
perhaps we could
Yeah,
more
yeah, yeah.
generally reference identified by the governor or a state or federal
Yeah.
agency
I mean, it was interpretive guidance. So,
from the governor.
right. So do we actually need to put in there from the governor?
Maybe not.
I don't think we need to put it in because.
Okay, I agree.
His agencies will identify.
Well, the interpretive guidance was based on CDC's, I mean, that's what that was all about. He wasn't referencing anything state, it was all federal.
Yeah,
Correct.
he's referencing the federal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
And
Fine.
Laura, on a little bit more granular level, it says, it's, under lines 5 and 6, it says essential employer includes a unit of state or local government, fine. 7, 8, 9, I'm not going to read it, but it basically lays out what an essential worker is. Then drop down to 13, 14. It says identified by a state or federal agency as critical in responding to the emergency. Does that mean like a grounds worker for, because it would be a local unit? Does that mean like a grounds worker for a school? Anne Arundel County Public Schools would be covered under this bill as far as emergency personnel?
The way this is drafted now, it would depend on if that industry or sector or that type of worker is considered essential so I don't know currently if that would fall under.
It seems like it does based on the language.
Yeah,
And I'm not trying to take away from anybody's role. They're all critical and important. But at the end of the day, someone who's maintaining a school building or coordinating a vaccine site at a, school building or handing out lunches and things like that, meals at a school building, certainly as far as prioritization goes, would be, and again, I'm not trying to take away, but would certainly be higher on the food chain as far as critical infrastructure in times of need than somebody who's basically doing outside grounds work for example, our Anne Arundel County Public School System, which is identified in this bill. And I think it captures everyone under that unit of government.
Are you asking, should we be precluding? Because again, I thought we weren't going to be doing that. I thought we were.
I'm just asking.
No, but I'm just to get into your head. I thought our goal was to allow the agencies to go ahead and make their decisions at a granular level.
Yeah, but
we
I mean,
as legislators would stay out of it.
but we're talking about federal dollars flowing through to local. And my fear is that, and is because some of these things will be broad and the reaction should, to some degree, be a little bit over in scope because you're probably dealing with something we haven't dealt with before. The reaction from the local units of government might be, we're including everyone in this right now until we can back out of it and we kind of figure out what the hell is going on. Think of it, CT, from the perspective of the point man and the fire team. And that's what I'm getting at. I'm not trying to monkey wrench this thing. I'm not trying to, but I'm just saying, you know, and I would totally respect and understand that reaction. If something else were to come down the pipe, the local units of government just go, everybody in this sector is now critical employee.
Right.
I get it. But at the same time, should we be giving legislative guidance? And we should, you know, again, I don't want to get too granular in it, but that
I just want you to know that again, but it's not going to be the local that decides. It will still be the state or federal agency. It won't get, so they can work for a local level, but they will be decided upon by the state or federal agency.
right. But
So, you understand what I'm saying?
Essential employer includes a unit of state or local government. So I'm wondering if that's all encapsulated under that.
But it does, but who calls the shot will still be the state agency. So it won't be a local government getting to say everybody. It will be the state agency getting to determine what's that local government allows to bring into these different categories.
So the way I see that happening is the governor issues the executive order, the state agency issues, it says, okay, all you school systems are critical, school personnel are critical. And I'm not trying to pick on schools, it's just, that's the one that's in my mind. Or whatever industry, quite frankly. But we know inside of each industry, there are non-critical functions.
Well, and I just want to make it clear again, I really believe that it was the will of the body to not get into the weeds and allow the professionals, i.e. the state agencies or the federal agencies passed down to the state agencies to make those decisions, and that we would not get involved in how our state, that's why we scratched out 2 or 3 pages, because we wanted to rely on the state.
I get it, but then also too, it comes back to the argument of, then you're talking about federal dollars passed through to the state, to the local units. You know, I don't want there to be some situation where we're just active, sort of, if you think about it from a military standpoint, like we're activating everybody, we'll just back out of it. But for right now, we're activating everybody because it gives access to large federal dollars. We have it back probably to large federal dollars and emergency spending. So activate everybody. I don't care what your role is, activate them all. And then over time, we can back out some of those people of that activation, which all is fine and good, but it's extremely costly.
And I want to say again, but I hope that we can have the faith that the higher ups in these agencies would be efficient in how they do things, because in order for your problem to be solved, we have to go to that micro level and go back and look at all those pages we just scratched out and say, well, yeah, but not this person. And yeah, but not this person, versus allowing the state to be the one to say this group of people. And I understand you're correct. It could very well be we activate everybody that works with the students, but that's something we would hope that they would be professional. They would, number one, have the faith that they would know what they're doing, since we don't work in that area. And 2, that they wouldn't be so broad sweeping. So I understand your concern. I don't know how we can address it without going to that micromanaging stage, which I thought we'd agreed that we were going to avoid.
I'm not trying to micromanage, man.
No, I know you're not.
That's not.
I know you're not. No. Okay, I didn't mean it that way. Please, I know Marines get sensitive.
No. We're talking about large sets of federal dollars that need
no question
out throughout the state, and in a critical and emergency like this, those dollars have to be well spent. And we're setting the legislative agenda here and the guidance here, and that's what I'm.
So I agree with you, but what I'm saying is, do we jump that deep into the mud and start telling these agencies who we think they should select in a specific group of people? That's all I'm saying. Like, I'm not questioning your doubting your intellectual veracity on this. I'm just trying to say I thought we were going to let them, and with the hope that their bureaucracy that they will do the right thing.
Well, and I'm not trying to be, I'm a strategist, and hope's not a strategy. And I understand where you're coming from, but I can totally see, and I know you can from your limited military experience, but all joking aside, but I know, and I would totally understand agencies that would do this.
Mhm.
I mean, it's what the military does. Oh my God, everybody come back to base, everybody do, these things, and then we start to walk things back as we get more intelligence and analyze it and compound
Well, what we can do,
compound the data.
Deal with it. We can come back at another time if you want and discuss how much power we want to give the agencies, because we did a large amount of power in this. Pretty much, hopefully they'll defer to the feds, but if not, we'll come back on this one. Okay, Laura, this is a little touch point we need to come back on. Chris, I know you're next.
I was just going to very briefly say that, maybe this requires a revisit of what we were thinking about with the governor, because, the governor is the top statewide elected official accountable to the citizens. So if there was going to be any deference to state and federal agencies, perhaps that's actually where we should put that. We talked about that at the outset. Identified by a state or federal agency, or as determined by the governor and executive order. Just food for thought. I don't know.
I mean, that's a possible solution. I mean, I got you. I don't disagree. I don't think it would hurt anything. So maybe that's a possible solution that at least puts all the bad decisions on one person who is an elected official versus agencies or her nameless. So
and unaccountable.
Without a doubt. Delegate Dumais.
I just was trying to address Delegate Howard's question. Is it your concern that essential worker is defined too broadly?
No,
And if it
my
is,
concern, it's left up to it says clearly in the bill that it's left up to a local unit or state unit of government. And my concern is that a local unit of government might react because we have all these different jurisdictions in Maryland, local units of government might react differently and sort of activate everybody in a time of emergency, when we know that there's some people inside of a silo of people, of a group or an industry, that within that silo of people, there's probably in some areas of the state, 6.1 million Marylanders, 24 jurisdictions, all these operating mechanisms and cogs and wheels in the state. There's probably some people, and there's probably a number of people, sizable amount, that are non-essential but would be included in an essential worker bubble if something were to go down.
all right. So here's one of the things, because Delegate Wilson, I know you want to move on, so I'm just as sort of putting this as on the side burner. Just wonder if that definition of essential worker could probably be defined a little sharper, that it's, a person who is performing, a duty or responsibility like identified by the governor or identified in the proclamation as essential.
I think that would actually,
because that's the way it kind of worked. The governor
Wilson
sort of
just-
said,
Wilson
everybody
just
stay
spoke
home, and the
against
only people that can leave their home are the following.
I think
Wilson just spoke against that, where he said that would be too granular. So
no. I don't think it'd be too granular to assign somebody to make that decision. It's too granular for us to make that decision and determine. That's what I mean. No, I have no problem with more specificity. I apologize if I did not correctly articulate.
No, that's fine.
But yeah, I believe that doing that. So again, maybe that, because again, we're putting it on one person. If the governor deems, that's fine. That would all, in the definition of essential worker, correct?
Yeah.
All right, Laura, did you get that?
I think it would go in the definition of essential employer, right? That's
Well,
the way
then
it's kind of
you would
framed.
have
essential worker.
employee.
It would
It
go
would
in
have to
essential
be the
worker.
worker.
Because the
Because
governor
you
would be
would have-
the
Go
governor
on.
would be the ultimate one. The governor would be the ultimate one, the way we're laying it out, to decide which categories of employees are considered essential.
Which
Right.
the way it's framed right now, the subtitle applies to an employer in the following industries or sectors as identified by a state or federal agency. So that the government agency is determining which employers generally are covered. And then as to whether Susie at the employment place is covered depends on whether she performs a duty or responsibility that cannot be performed remotely or is required to be completed at the work site. So it's kind of like a broad industry determination, like is my industry or type of employment critical or essential? And if so, can I perform my work remotely?
And my point is that within that, and again, I'm not trying to target education, but when you look at from an education standpoint, right? You look at AACPS schools, and I'm not trying to talk out of turn. We have great schools, we have great school board, all that type of stuff. But when you look at it, a groundskeeper for AACPS can't perform their work remotely, yet they would probably not serve a function in a critical infrastructure when this legislation will become active. Do you see what I'm getting at? Now, it might be a bad example, it probably is, but I'm trying to, you see what I'm getting at, Laura?
Yeah, I think this is the rub with the scope question, that the work group had a lot of discussion about this as well, because, the bill as it came in was very specific. And then there was a discussion of, well, we don't want to be so specific. We want to let the agencies decide. But then if you do that, then there's not as much room for sort of saying, well, we prioritize some workers as the highest priority or most essential. There was discussion at the work group about doing no,
we're not doing that stuff.
See,
It is a question of tying it back to the governor's order. Governor's order said, closure of non-essential businesses generally. This order controls the occupancy and use of all businesses, organizations, establishments, and facilities that are not part of a critical infrastructure sectors identified by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, cyber, whatever. So, I think if we fix the essential worker so that is defined by the executive proclamation, that their duties are essential or critical or whatever the right terminology is, then it's not so broad that it's like these agencies get to decide.
Okay.
But I think Laura's actually saying the other, that
I know, I think
you want the governor to determine what employers are the subject.
No, and I know that can't work for just what Seth said, because if he says this employer is deemed essential, well, yeah, but that secretary's not, because she can work from home. And again, and I agree, it's kind of written there very clearly, but would it hurt to put as defined by the governor, by the governor's proclamation in the definition of essential worker?
No, I think there's a way that we could do it. So the subtitle applies to essential employer, like specific essential employers. So you could say.
See, I'm still back in definitions. That's the difference.
Right.
I think that the way that I understand this bill is that 31602, which that's who it matters to, these employers. It matters to the specific employers that are targeted, identified as critical. You might, that's who it matters to. So that's why I think it sort of is definitional, because you have to look at that to understand who's covered by the bill.
Right.
But there's got to be a way that we can say, essentially seems like what you're trying to get at is just making it explicit that essential workers work for those employers that are identified by an agency, right?
That are identified by the proclamation
Of the governor,
Right.
or no, because we already have state or federal agency or the governor's proclamation. We didn't resort merely to the governor's proclamation, correct?
Can I just raise a concern? And if I'm an essential employer and I'm in the construction industry, what you're saying is you want to further define what the worker is and saying, well, okay, a laborer is essential, but my bookkeeper is not. And I don't think it works like that. We're either an essential employer that has to operate, or we're not. I'd be concerned if we're going to try to bifurcate out.
But it defines
who in my business would be essential. Yeah.
It defines essential worker, and this is, we really have to wrap our head around. This is important. That this can't work remotely. That they're in this area that it's necessarily, and they can't work remotely. So not everybody at the grocery store is an essential worker, even though grocery stores are considered essential employers, because the bookkeeper doesn't need to be at the grocery store to do their job. I thought that exactly what Seth's problem was, that we didn't want to do such broad sweeping strokes. Ergo, we wanted to be able to make sure that not everybody at that grocery store was considered in this, or that construction site was considered an essential worker, just because the construction workers are considered essential, or the construction companies are considered essential employees. The way to do that, I would have assumed, would be in the definition of essential worker. And it's already in there, if you look, because it says who can't perform this at home. Now, the vice chair brought in, do we want to, empower the governor or to also add to what would be considered in the definition of to define what essential workers are, versus right now it's just essential areas of employment. Is that correct, Laura? Am I tracking now?
It's a larger silo. Essential area of employment is encompasses.
I know, Seth.
So that's what I'm explaining to Chris. Chris was never in the military, so I'm going to go slow. No, I'm just joking, Chris. But so I'm trying to look at the silos within the broader silo of employment is what I'm trying.
Right, and I totally get it, Laura. So the question is, do we need to more narrowly define essential workers? We have the definition right above there. Do we need to more narrowly define it? I believe it is defined by the very definition of saying that can't work remotely. And I thought that would tie into, also being named by the governor because they work in that field. And that's what the vice chair was saying. Do we want to put something about the governor's proclamation in the definition of essential workers? Or is it already done? I mean, I know Seth hates me, and that's why we're going through this exercise here. But I want to, because we actually have stuff to cover, which is not this.
Well, the scope is kind of the threshold question. This is the big.
It really is.
This is important.
No, it is.
So are you trying to say that there's kind of two bites at the apple for the executive branch to decide who's subject to this bill, both in terms of which industries and sectors and in terms of which individual workers? Is that what you're trying to get at?
And there's yes and no, because the answer to me, I don't know if we need to, because the definition of essential worker says, if you're in this area that he defines and an individual who performs a duty during an emergency that cannot be performed remotely and is required to be on the work site, I thought that would clarify that. Seth doesn't think so.
Well,
Laura's asked, Chairman, Laura's asking the right question, because back to my example, how can I run a business without paying the bills?
No, but
the bookkeeper can't do that at home. There, ergo, who decides? Okay. No,
I got it. I see what you're saying. I totally get it. I'm sorry, my mind drifted. You're saying your bookkeeper needs to be considered essential, even though she can do her job from home. Otherwise, your business doesn't run.
The only answer is that the employer has to figure out who's the essential worker and make accommodations as CDC would determine.
We have to define that because we're the government.
Then I don't know that I have a good answer for this, to be honest with you. I don't know how you put in code, because now, all right, I don't know. I'd have to stop talking. I have a good answer.
Well, no, sir. And I want to take this back. Just because she's not an essential worker or their bookkeeper is not an essential worker, that does not mean that they cannot be employed to do their job. We're getting off into the woods here. Your bookkeeper at your site, just because they're not an essential worker, can still be paid, employed, and required to do their job. They just do it from home. This does not preclude them from showing up at their home office and working for you all day under these definitions.
It would mean that the worker wouldn't be entitled to earn the leave, to be provided the leave, or have the right to refuse stuff specifically.
Right, because if they don't have to come in, they don't have the right to refuse when they don't come in. So your bookkeeper would not be covered under this. She would still be an employee. She'd still be required to come in and perform the job that she or he is doing, lest she be fired.
What if she was coming in to perform an essential?
So you're thinking, CT, that the business would encourage people to work at home, ergo not be subject to the subtitle?
I would.
I got to think about this. I hadn't thought about that.
Me too. I think I need to play with the language a little.
Yeah, and that's important. This is the scope. So You guys are killing me, but this is very good discussion because it needs to happen.
And I don't mean to be mean, but you know,
You're doing a good job.
Good, thank you. But this is a big
scope.
scope, man. And this,
I get it.
yeah, and you know, we're doing a summer studies worth of work here in a couple, 3 weeks on a massive piece of legislation that's now incorporated, or it looking to be, and no disrespect, but leave days, and I mean, there's all kinds of stuff going on with this thing. So it's a whole terms here. So we're trying to put out a good product,
So
and I know
we'll
we
put this,
all are.
we'll put this down as one of the areas that we need to come back to, and one of the areas of contention. My goal is to try to identify the areas of contention, maybe not solve that problem today, but at least find out what we agree on so we can focus on the areas of contention, okay?
Yeah.
So now you brought a very good point. I know we belabored it. I think, Lily, did you have a question?
After listening to everybody's comment, I think if I could just summarize or understand for my own sake, what the problem that is bothering everybody is, which is we are giving the governor the power to issue executive order and use that executive order as the framework to define essential as far as employers are concerned, but we're not stipulating within those employers or job categories, particular jobs would fall into that those categories, which means we're leaving it wide open for employers to interpret for themselves. And that could be great variations in equities across the board, right?
And lead, quite frankly, Lily, into a disjointed response to a national emergency.
Correct. So we definitely have to come back and deal with the scope. Laura, I guess we can
Keep
do
going.
this by phone. But yeah, I'm gonna have to talk with you about this too, because we have to get this language right. Madam Vice Chair, if you have any ideas, I know we probably have to, that's gonna be a big one.
I think I want to look at the executive order, which I
Yeah,
spent a lot of time with for my law firm at one point in time, but you know, I think the answer is there. We've defined the employers. But I think when we're talking about the workers, particularly when we get back to when we get farther into this and we're talking about who can refuse and who can't, that's why I'm so worried about the definition of the worker. And I think it is the worker that is, I just haven't figured out how to say it, performing the critical things that are determined to be necessary during the emergency. But that flows from who the employers are that are decided to be essential.
right. Oh, boy.
You know, I mean, the stay-at-home order was everybody stay home unless you are carved out, you know,
Correct.
the following,
Right.
you know, categories, period.
And the second order, to what you're saying is, the second order was all the departments of health in each municipality have certain broad or lessened or whatever powers. So hence my point, you know, that it is kind of opening up, I guess. I'm sorry, I'm trailing off because I'm thinking about this, but
Well, we're
That's right.
gonna come
So
back.
we'll come back to it. We have to define what an essential worker is.
Yeah,
But I think I have to, some of us need to look at some of the executive orders to see how it was done.
okay,
You
Laura,
want to keep going?
yes, please.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's the good news. We skip a lot of pages.
Yeah. So I don't want to go too quickly. So let's see. I just want to point out what's being struck. So the couple pages I just skimmed over were the section that laid out all the specific industries that were covered. And so that's the language that we just went past. This section here that struck is the section that required the Maryland Emergency Management Agency or a local emergency management agency to make the announcement that an emergency is in effect. The subcommittee and work group had discussed sort of streamlining that process and just having it be triggered by, I guess in this case, it would be just an executive proclamation that there's a catastrophic health emergency.
Yep,
Are there any questions about that?
Correct.
nope.
Okay. This section here is the sort of general requirements for employers. So these are just some kind of standard requirements that this would require, such as providing certain working conditions, providing necessary amounts of safety equipment at no cost to essential workers. That piece does have a substantial cost, as we know.
What is mental distress? What is that?
That was one of my questions. Is this actually in regulations or from MOSH or OSHA? It's
I have not seen
subjective.
that. Yeah, I've
Yeah.
not seen that.
I'm not crazy about Roman numeral 1.
Mhm.
May I chime in on this?
Please.
I think it needs to say, this is Chris Adams talking, during an emergency, each essential employer shall, instead of 3 saying create, I think it needs to say adopt,
Yes.
post
Don't worry.
and maintain written protocols as defined by state or federal agency or CDC or something, but
Yeah.
Yeah, Seth, I written that down. I think nobody's going to disagree. I wanted to get back to the mental, the providing work conditions. If there are already, is there already a definition of safe work conditions, and especially the mental health part, because that is such, from a lawyer's point of view, a horribly ambiguous,
Right.
wide open thing that we're putting in there. I didn't understand, and I thought we were doing this for public safety. I don't know how mental health falls into that.
I don't think it does. And Chairman, can I, by taking a regulation and posting it, adopting it and posting it so that employees can see what the protocols are. I mean, it's at that point in time, they can see the protocols and see whether or not the employer is meeting those protocols. And then I'm assuming these posters, like other OSHA or Department of Labor posters, which say if there's a violation, here's the phone number.
And so Laura, or Chris, we done?
Yes.
Laura, so the question is, number one, do we need this section? Is there, again, is there another, is it, because it should, this stuff I'm assuming is already required by OSHA. And
So Laura, during, and Mr. Chair, during the joint work group, where those 3 meetings that we had with the Senate and the House, well, there was one day that Chloe Waterman was there.
Mhm.
And on my working draft, I have a note right in this section to see Chloe's amendment. Now, I don't know if it was in her written testimony. I just couldn't find it. But that she, I think, was doing what Delegate Adams is talking about, where she was referencing specific code or COMAR or whatever. But I'm going to have to go find her testimony. But I think it's not testimony. She was invited to that work group one morning. And she specifically had something for this section that I think we all liked and was broader.
So, yeah, so Madam Vice Chair, I think what happened in a prior meeting, we had talked about how it'd be nice if this bill, instead of it being an enforcement mechanism, it was a educational and guidance vehicle.
Right.
And so if, I never actually read what her amendment was, so I can't speak to it, but I mean, if we're looking to give businesses guidance, it's going to be OSHA, and it's also going to be give the
I
employee.
think that's what it was.
And so,
The,
but you know, the problem is today, we can write that, but we don't know what it's going to be tomorrow, and CDC may have different protocols for a different time.
Which
So I
is-
think, yeah.
I'll have to find it because I do think it referenced things. It was not
Go ahead, Laura.
specific.
The only thing I was going to say is, so Miss Waterman is the person who, as I understand it, has been working with Delegate Valderrama. So for the materials for today, I sent out the new Valderrama reprint. That's
You did, yes.
version. And if you look, the amendments don't really make changes to that part of the bill. They make changes to the part of the bill that set up, and we haven't gotten there yet, but set up an employer-specific safety plan. So I don't recall Ms. Waterman
There,
having
all right.
specific amendments on this part. I know that the work group discussed a lot about the cost of employers to providing the safety equipment.
And that's where, and right there, the in the chambers stuff they've recently sent us in line 25, they suggested that at the end, we add something to the effect of unless it causes undue hardship. Actually, several did. I think NFIB said that, and so did the chamber.
May I just reinforce, I think that if CDC's guidance is that, that certain PPP needs to be used and adopted, you know, I think maybe if you go to number 4, which is on the next page, if you take how I'm trying to change the word, to have number 4 say, provide or implement any other measures as required according to a governor's declaration or guidance. In other words, have the governor come to a conclusion that somehow or another we're going to require PPP to be provided. And if you remember how the governor did it last time around, he backed that up with the Department of Commerce and grant dollars to help businesses pay for that. So it seems like to me, if the committee likes the way that I'm trying to do this, you know, get rid of requiring this cost because we don't know what the cost is. We don't even know what the PPP is, but let's say post and adopt guidance from CDC and then have the governor through proclamation determine if there's implement any other measures or personal protective equipment requirements to ensure the health and safety of essential workers. So get the governor involved when it comes time to making these obligations on businesses to do that.
And that's consistent with what the chamber's concerns were. They
Right.
circled particularly other measures that it was too broad, whereas at least we're deciding who has to tell them what the other measures are.
Let the governor decide that.
Yeah, I was definitely lying through a lot of that. But the question is, we still have to go back to the very beginning here. We're talking about are we intent on trying to find out what OSHA wants to do for we say each employer shall provide working conditions.
It
Do we
just
want
comply with OSHA and MOSHA and
the governor?
whomever.
Yeah. Laura, you get it?
May I give that to you again?
But yeah, say that again.
During an emergency, each essential employer shall adopt and maintain written protocols subject to OSHA and MOSH and post those protocols in a public place for employees to see them. And then the next part of that would be provide or implement any other measures or safety equipment according to the governor's proclamation where he or she would define such.
All right. The only thing about that, Chris, is there has to be some clarification because if the governor says that everybody in that facility needs to have N95 masks, why would the employee need to pay for that?
I think the governor in that proclamation could say that we're going to require employers to provide it, and here's the Department of Commerce.
We can also do that. I think that I think I agree with what you're trying to go, but I think it should be put at no cost to the employee or the worker or the essential worker. Should be somewhere in there to ensure that, you know, if the governor doesn't address that, I don't want them requiring these individuals to pay for their stuff, pay for their equipment, you know, because nobody's addressed it.
What if it's not available? Has that been discussed?
Subject to availability, I think, was something the work group also discussed because there was a PPE shortage.
Big time, yeah.
Well,
And that's no fault of
because
the
that
employer.
that brings on the issue. If there's no PPP, are they going into work? Again,
I'd say
To some degree.
no, because again, that's the we're trying to avoid is individuals going to a knowingly dangerous area with no PPE, saying, well, you still got to come to work. Because if there's no PPE, then whatever's going on shouldn't still be going on.
Well, I hope everybody's
Can
got
be
like,
safe.
I hope everybody's got like 3 months of food in their pantry then.
I don't
So
know
you're
how
trying
to
to
do
keep.
it.
So you're trying to keep number 2.
I'm trying to say that I agree with the way you're going with this about as dictated by the governor, posting as is required, you know, in a public posting, adopt the protocols, post in a public space, provide sufficient safety equipment at no cost to the worker. I don't think that's a problem.
Well, let's let Laura draw that up and see what it looks like at the next meeting.
Laura, do you understand where I'm going with this?
Well, I know, I hear what
How
you're
are
saying.
you
I hear what you're saying.
how are you proposing to change what's in 2 currently?
He's saying put it in the part where the governor, if he requires the PPP, that it be provided at no cost to the worker.
If CDC, OSHA, or the governor requires what we're talking about is adopting protocols, posting protocols, and then according to the governor or CDC or OSHA, however you want it, guidance, providing PPE at no cost to the employee, or the worker.
Okay.
Potential worker.
So the way this would play out is, like, currently CDC is recommending face masks, right? And so Governor Hogan is requiring face masks to be worn inside. So in that case, just the employers that are covered by the bill would have to provide it? Is that what you're saying?
What, I'm sorry, what was that last part again?
I'm not understanding how what you're proposing changes what's in the bill now.
It doesn't. Chris is trying to kill me now. I was just trying to give him what he wanted, and instead
So can I make a suggestion? If we start at line 19, during an emergency, each essential employer shall, 1, provide working conditions that comply with whomever we decide, whether it's MOSHA, OSHA, state. And then 2, provide necessary amounts of safety equipment at no cost to essential employer workers, subject to availability. Then we go to 3, and that's where instead of the word create, we were going to use adopt and maintain written protocols to enforce any necessary, and I think this is fine, hygienic practices or disease mitigation measures at a work site. And again, I'd say as recommended or determined by CDC and whomever. And then when you go up to number 4 on the next page, it's provide or implement any other measures or requirements to ensure the general health and safety of the essential worker as determined or set forth in governor's proclamation.
correct.
Or guidance from,
OSHA or MOSH.
right.
Okay.
And I think, we've taken out the physical harm and mental distress thing because we're assuming that OSHA and MOSHA and all of those people have it. Ensure physical health and safety, I think we can take out because again, that's clearly going to be in the guidance from MOSHA, OSHA, and whomever. We've covered providing the necessary equipment, added subject to the availability. And then the rest, I think I was clear on.
And we ensure that it's at no cost to the worker. Correct.
Yeah, I left that in, or I would propose leaving that in.
I would, no, the important is anything that's required by the governor as far as be done at no cost to the worker. And I guess you could put in there subject to availability.
Yeah, I would put that in.
Well, we're flying through this, guys.
Then we get to skip a few more pages.
Yep.
Yeah. So this section here had laid out the right to refuse standard and the definition of unsafe work environment. So we've reworked that.
Now, Laura, in reworking this, is there a time limit for them to still complain? Or
Yeah,
is that in a different section?
can I cover what we're striking?
I'm
scrolling
sorry,
down.
go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in addition, the amendments also strike, this is where Ms. Waterman's the new set of amendments from Delegate Valderrama is not reflected in the reprint here. This
Right.
reprint strikes out the employer-specific plans. So, but in Delegate Valderrama's new set of amendments, which I can pull on screen if you all wanted to see, it requires the department, I believe it's the Commissioner of Labor and Industry to set out like a template health emergency preparedness plan.
Right.
And then
Yeah.
employers would have to kind of develop it or adopt it based on their specific needs and then share it with the commissioner and make it public. So that's different than what's in this bill, which is to say, and we'll get to it later, that the MOSH has to adopt a federal standard from OSHA, or if OSHA doesn't adopt one, MOSH has to adopt a COVID-specific standard.
So just take a step back. Hers is asking us to, in addition to what you just stated, what is hers asking us to do again?
Her
Well,
amendment
Rama's
is
amendment?
sort of restoring some of the language that was in the bill as introduced, where an employer has to set up a specific plan. So, do you want me to just pull that one up so you can look at it?
Yeah, because these are, I think I like these amendments.
From
Yeah, I'm
Delegate
not-
Calderon.
On the piece.
Yeah, I'm not a, yeah, let me see him because I'm not a big fan.
No, I know, but I think we ought to look at it.
Are we
Bird
looking
doesn't
at those to give some guidance on how they have to set up the protocol? Is that the intent? Because you already said they need to set it up as a protocol. Now we're going to get some guidance on what should be included. Is that the intent?
I believe
Yes
so.
or
Let
no?
me, yeah, sorry, I'm gonna have to ask you to re-ask it once I pull this up. Don't-
Well, Hannah was directing that to Vice Chair since she said,
Okay,
Oh. She reads in the Valderrama amendment, if you can look at its page, I think 11 of 20, and it says 1605, which on that we've been working with was stricken. And I didn't like all of it, but I do like on line 16 through 17, where they talk about adhere to a health emergency preparedness plan
Mhm.
in accordance with 1606, which is then further on. I mean, the basic thing was OSHA, and the Department of Labor people talked about this too, where there's supposed to be a temporary emergency preparedness offered by OSHA that then most wants to adopt. And I think that's what this is trying to get to.
okay, that's what I was trying to clarify. So it's just kind of getting the,
Yeah, I don't think we need all of the
They use.
language in 1605, because I do think some of that was too specific. What's an unsanitary? This is where it said unsanitary conditions. But somehow I'd like to work in line 16 through 17 of page 11, which is a little bit before then.
What now?
so we're sharing screen. This is Delegate Valderrama's amendment.
Right.
Where
Yeah,
can
go
you,
back one more page. So it's page 11. And in the 581 that has sort of the subcommittee's amendments, in 3-1605, we strike out this whole thing about what is an unsafe work environment
right,
with the whole routine. But it's line 16 and 17 that I sort of think we could incorporate that and then go to Delegate Valderrama's suggestions about 1606.
And
That
when you
I
say
do
like
like.
16, 17, are you going off Valderrama's amendments or are you going off of the,
Now, this is about what's on the screen on Valderrama's amendments.
so you want to adopt
Line 16 and 17, I want to be able to fit in someplace.
the essential employer's failure to develop? But they're
And
not,
here-
we don't want them to develop anything.
That's
To
true.
adhere to something. We want MOSH or something to develop. We don't want them.
Okay, well, no, that I agree to. All right,
they definitely are going to have to tailor things based on what MOSH has.
on there, right.
It's just too
All right,
individualized.
well, maybe it's actually 1606 that I like that Valderrama has. So
So
Yeah,
they
that's
have
I'm
to
sorry
base
for
it
that
off of
detour.
MOSH,
Maybe we
but
need
they
to
have
just go back and do 581, that one piece that we were working on, and then we'll look at Valderrama's second. I think it might be too hard to do it both.
Because at the end of the day, a restaurant's a restaurant and MOSH can write something for restaurants. They can write something for food service. They can write something.
Mhm.
They can specify. What I don't want is employers taking upon themselves to try and figure out something, incur additional liability for construing the law when they can just have recommendations from the state or the
Okay,
federal
all right.
to adopt.
All right, maybe Laura or Mr. Chair, I might have been wrong to move us in this direction. Why don't we go back to the 581 that includes sort of the subcommittees discussions, and then we'll take the Valderrama stuff up separate.
Okay.
I think that might be easier. Sorry for the diversion.
It's okay. It's all related, you know.
I
that,
know.
So
So we are going to be on page what now in the other bill?
In the other bill, it is page 14, maybe?
14?
14.
14. Yep.
So this is going back to the right to refuse. So this reprint strikes the specific definition of unsafe working condition and the whole separate process for refusing a specific job responsibility, and instead brings in language from current state law under Title V, which is like the employment occupational safety and health standards in state law, and also the regulation that the department sent to us. So the complaint, the definition, this is all straight from, you know, those two things. So we have a definition of what is considered a complaint. So it's a request for inspection of a workplace, a complaint regarding conditions at the workplace that is registered with basically a relevant agency, a complaint regarding conditions at the workplace made in good faith to the employer, a management supervisor, or another essential worker who's in a supervisory capacity. Then it says an essential worker has a right to refuse to perform an assigned task if the worker is confronted with a choice between not performing a task or being subjected to serious injury or death arising from a hazardous condition at the workplace, has no reasonable alternative, and refuses in good faith to be exposed to the dangerous condition, and the condition causing the worker's apprehension of death or injury is of such a nature that a reasonable individual under the circumstances would conclude that there is real danger of death or serious injury. There is insufficient time due to the urgency of the situation to eliminate the danger, basically by reaching out to an agency for help. And the worker, if possible, has sought to correct the conditions and has been unable to obtain a correction. So that's the standard that's laid out in COMAR for generally for all employees that are protected from.
Right.
So this is currently in COMAR. So you'd be bringing it under this sort of what's here specifically.
It would only apply to an emergency.
Right. Now, the only questions I do have are, we discussed this before prior to you bringing this in. I do like the language, is my goal and motivation of trying to make sure that any of these issues were exposed. And when reading about the protections, it says, you know, obviously they may not discharge or otherwise discriminate against an worker if they file a complaint. And my worry is, remember the other one said they just have to do it within 3 days. And I said 24, I wanted 24 hours because I don't want other individuals sitting. And this is remember, this is only for the catastrophic health emergency. I don't want other individuals working in that area. I would like, I didn't see any timeline as far as for them to, and I get the point. Is there a way to write it in that requires them to file this complaint within 24 hours? But of course, I don't want them to not be protected if for some reason they're in the hospital and can't do it. You understand the dilemma? Because I don't want them to sit around for 3 days.
I do. If you look at page, it's gonna have a page 19 at the very bottom. It's the page numbers at the bottom, but it's about halfway down the page. Roman numeral D, Roman numeral 2. Commissioner is timely an oral complaint made by an essential worker under the circumstances described in paragraph 1, provided the essential worker submits a written complaint within 7 days of the oral complaint.
Right.
And that includes the signature.
Right.
I think that gives the emergency, they call, this is the complaint, and it's accepted.
No, and I saw that again, but it doesn't define, they can call within how many days? It doesn't define it. You know, again, the original bill had 3 days that they can wait. I don't know if that's good health policy to have people waiting around for 3 days before they make a call. This one goes even further. They make it even looser. don't have a defined, you didn't tell you how long you have to wait before, or you long you're allowed to wait before you can actually call in a complaint.
No, I don't mind putting in, they have to call within 24 hours of,
And I don't want this to be a part, I don't want this to be otherwise, I don't want it to be as a caveat of them being retaliated against though. I don't know how to do that because I don't want, if they call 36 hours late, then okay, they are afforded none of the protections. But because we're in a health emergency, it is very important that individuals who see this as, these, possibly actions or, are, report as soon as possible. Am I asking for too much, Laura?
No, I'm just trying to think through, Commissioner Helmeniak talked about how the state law has to be at least as stringent as what's required by OSHA. And so I'm trying to think about how, the way the reprint looks right now, this is just bringing in exactly as it appears
Right.
in the other section of law and in the regulations.
Right.
So,
But as Seth said
But-
earlier, we have to adopt, we're going to have to make some changes because this is for a catastrophic emergency. It's not
Right.
day-to-day dangers that we're talking about.
Can I chime in here for a moment?
Yeah.
I mean, part of the takeaway from the meeting with Department of Labor, it appears to be that we're going to try to take their codified, we're going to codify their regulations.
As much as we can, yes.
All right, and I'm just going to caution and say, I don't know that's the best idea, but the takeaway that I got from listening to OSHA or OSHA talk is that the framework that they use for health hazards where you're asking a worker to be on a scaffolding is a completely different conversation than one that relates to, COVID, both in trying to determine what a healthy work environment is and also enforcement. I mean, and so my takeaway was anything that we try to do in statute that takes this current situation we're in with COVID and then tries to apply it in the framework that MOSHA uses, that they're not compatible. We've taken, and I'm just now reading what's being put here, and the timelines don't work, Mr. Chairman, because these timelines don't equal the same occupational hazard that I'm describing with scaffolding. I mean,
I'm sorry? You said,
well, it's pretty clear. So OSHA or MOSH, if there's an occupational hazard, it's pretty clear cut. And they've written the way they have it in regulation, it's pretty clear cut what's going on. And there's some measure of employer misconduct that would cause somebody to say, well, no, you're getting on that scaffold whether you like it or
I
not.
understand.
The problem with this healthy working environment, this unsafe working environment, is we're trying to apply that same standard to a much more, a much different application is all I'm saying, which I don't know how we could ever get the statute to say what you want it to say and have it be effective immediately, because that's not, I just don't see how it can happen. I'm going to have the same problem with having the commissioner go out and do these investigations, because you'll remember him saying that a MOSH investigation is months in length, because it grants the employer the ability to challenge the action in front of an administrative law judge. What you're trying,
The response was immediate. That's what we're trying to get to. I agree with you. We have a separate there. That's a separate issue of whatever their findings, whatever MOSH's findings are, versus an immediate response for the protection of the employee, which is what we're trying to write into law to make sure there's some response for the protection of the employee in a hazardous and a health crisis and a hazardous work environment. And what I heard was they're able to do it in a timely manner. Now, the backside of that is, they can't close them down immediately, but that's where the health department comes in and for health violations, things of that nature. But the response is what we were concerned with. I got the feeling that they actually can respond to these complaints in a timely manner. They can respond to these areas and these places of employment in a timely manner to begin the investigation and hopefully the remediation of some of these issues.
I hate to bring it up, but the healthcare environment comes to mind, unless we've somehow or another resolved the issue for hospitals. But I mean, just think of it through the lens of COVID. in a healthy work environment, all of a sudden we're going to have motion investigations in hospitals where by definition,
And we're not out, and you can cut that out of it because we know that hospitals have their own issues.
They have their own.
yeah, okay, that's fair enough.
So they're not going to be, we have to add a section specifically for the hospitals that we're still working on. This is for the grocery stores. This is for the bus driver who doesn't have a mask, they haven't done anything around him. He's been driving there on the bus. We want him to be able to do something. And at this point, the only thing we have is to complain the most. We don't want to create a whole different agency.
No, we don't. No, you're right.
And so I understand your point,
So,
but I do believe.
Mr. Chair, I think where we need to look to sort of put, whether it's 24 hours, whatever we decide, is actually on page 14, when we're defining what the complaint includes. So complaint includes a request for an inspection of the workplace and a complaint regarding conditions. I think
I
maybe
see.
tailor 2 and 3 to the catastrophic health emergency, as opposed to sort of, it's very broad at the moment. I mean, I don't have any specific language, but I think if we're trying to tailor it, then the rest of it does sort of fit.
Yeah.
But I
we can
think we just have to define that this is a complaint for the catastrophic health emergency. And you can request an inspection and you can make the complaint about the conditions where you registered. But I think it's, a complaint regarding violations of the proclamation or violations of the whatever emergency health preparedness plan. And that the complaint shall be made at least orally within 24 hours. And then I think the right to refuse language is fine.
Yeah, I think that's fine. That gets me out of the little thing I was stuck in. So
Yeah,
go back on number
But I-
2 and 3 and just narrow it down to dealing with violations of, I guess, the health plan or the emergency preparedness proclamation, whatever it is that we determine the governor says. And so not just conditions, but more violations in the workplace, because there has to be some standard before, some standard set.
mhm.
The danger now. And I don't want to do this, but so if there's something that hasn't been thought, I guess it would still be protected through most in general. If there's something that, wasn't covered, that, they're like, well, this is still dangerous. Nobody said it. I guess they're still covered through this generalized section under most. But this is, I do want this narrowly tailored to dealing with people who are in violation of the governor's emergency preparedness plan. Okay? That would get, and to be done within 24 hours, that would narrow that down. And then
I'll
that
have to
leaves.
check. Yeah, I'll have to check with the department about the 24-hour thing, because my sense was that we can't be, sort of got the sense from the commissioner that we can't be sort of narrowing what's required generally.
Well, and I don't disagree with that, but we're not, as Chris and Seth, but this isn't just the guy on the ladder being ordered to stay up there with no scaffolding. This is an emergency preparedness. So I believe it is very important that we, some of these things we're not, I don't know how to broach that, but some of these things we would be asking more. And I don't want people going through and on their own time, deciding when they want to file a complaint if there is a dangerous situation that they are familiar with.
So you were saying requiring 24 hours to complain?
No,
The way
some complaints should be filed within 24 hours. Loosely, there's no.
And what happens if they don't file it within?
Not a damn thing. Yeah, there's no enforcement mechanism on this section.
The way it had been in the bill, remember, was file it within this period of time in order to be protected from
Right,
retaliation.
and I didn't want, and that's not what I want. But if we define what a complaint is, we can file it under that, and should be, not shall, but should be, or
Yeah,
24
right.
hours. Just get it out there without making it punitive.
Okay.
I know we're walking the line here, Laura. I know we're walking it, but I'm trying to get somewhere. I
Okay.
people sitting on stuff like this.
Yeah. The only other thing I wanted to bring up, you and Delegate Adams were talking about, I think in the response from the department, the non-formal complaint process. So we have what's in statute, what you see on screen in regulation, but also the department is using this more informal process to kind of respond more quickly to
Yeah.
situations that arise. So that I think would still exist outside of this.
I think that I actually like the rest of it, the way it's written, as far as the complaint, the response, and I even like the retaliation, the way it's laid out.
Right.
One
so
of the things
this-
I wanted to ask, when it comes to, have we gotten the retaliation yet? Or are we still?
No, I mean, it's it right here.
Right.
On the next
What
page.
page is that? I'm missing something here.
We're on page
It's on-
15.
It's on page 15.
15. Wait
One
a
of the
minute.
questions I had to ask is for the person that refused, the right to refuse, it does not come to work. Is it, the way the language reads, I'm unsure, is it considered retaliation to force them to use leave or not pay them for the hours they don't work?
Let me see.
Doesn't say.
Ask that again, CT.
It says may not discharge or otherwise discriminate against.
Right, so would that be forcing them to use their leave because they didn't come in, or saying, I'm not gonna pay you for those hours? Would that be considered a form of retaliation? And if so, I don't believe that that's the intent.
If you want to be more specific about what is considered discrimination, I think that we should be more specific because this is kind of standard anti-retaliation language that we see in a
Right.
lot of.
Laura, you coming in?
Yeah,
this-
but in this case, discrimination has a specific term, right? We're talking about protected classes and things like that. This is not,
Not under this, not
Not
The
saying.
under
department,
most.
yeah, the department was saying,
Okay.
it sounds like they use discrimination in this context to mean sort of retaliation. They said I think they said they use the terms interchangeably. So it's not what we think of when we think discrimination. It's more like, were you treated differently than other workers because of exercising rights under our
Which is-
law?
Which is almost lunacy because Title VII is all about discrimination versus, so, and I don't know how we feel about, again, the words even discriminated against versus retaliated. I believe retaliate is actually much more, definitive.
I think we're looking for, but that's the word we're looking for, not, I don't know.
I know, I agree, I'm agreeing with you, Delegate, is that I don't think discrimination is the proper word, especially with the laws that we write. I think it should be retaliate. And I guess if you want to talk about, is there a way, I know we've defined retaliate, we've defined this in other areas of the law when it comes to employment law, like EEOC law, in fact. They define what retaliation is as far as, not promoting you, not employing, discharging. I just wanted to make sure that we defined it, but did not define it in such a way that if this guy says, I don't want to come, okay, but you have to use your leave. That shouldn't be.
So you are not intending to cover, it's not discrimination in your eyes if employers say, okay, you refuse to come in, but I'm gonna dock you with your leave.
I
Yeah,
think it's both. I think it should say retaliate or discriminate.
yeah, I mean, I don't think that's a problem, yeah, but I just don't want it to be in a position where if somebody's like, I'm not coming into work, you're like, okay, but I shouldn't have to pay you because I'm suffering with this pandemic too. This crisis is also my crisis.
Well, there is the process where, and again, it's sort of on page 15. E2, if after the investigation, the commission, then they go to court and they can have the former position with back pay or any other appropriate leave in the circumstance.
I saw that, yeah. So to me, I would assume that means back pay means that they're not getting paid while all this is being investigated.
Mhm.
And so, but I don't know if, shit. Yeah,
I mean, you can sort of say the former position with back pay, and you can also say reinstate leave,
mhm. Yeah,
reinstate any leave that was denied.
correct.
And again, I think I'm putting retaliate in every place where it says discriminate, but I think I would like both words.
I don't have a
If the
problem.
Department of Labor uses discrimination in a certain,
Right.
in their heads, I don't want to,
Yeah, just keep what's familiar, what they're familiar with. I'm fine. Even again, for employment law, it's retaliation. So we do, if we could do that for the discrimination, put in retaliate against,
yeah.
I guess we don't have to put, because they say that one of the on a finding, they could require them to pay back pay, which would assume that means they don't have to pay them while they take leave. But I would like to also put under back pay, or replace leave, or what's the
Yeah, reinstate leave.
state, leave
Yeah.
that had been taken.
So
Right.
under the example that you were giving, the worker says, this is unsafe, I'm not coming in. They file a complaint with the commissioner because they can't get it resolved themselves. They meet all this criteria in the bill. And the employer says, I'm not paying you. I get that you're not coming in, but I'm not paying you right now. And I'm gonna make you use your leave that you have. So you're saying, I thought you were saying that would be appropriate for the employer to make an employee
believe-
take leave or not be paid.
I
And
believe
so
it is.
now I'm confused again that you're saying they should get leave reinstated. So
No, I'm saying.
Well, only if the
it's later-
court makes the determination.
Right. It's later on in what page is this again? Because
Page
later on,
15.
it definitely talks about the courts getting involved. And if the courts get involved, if you're like trying to argue that, look, I shouldn't have had to take leave because I could have came in and worked safely, and then the courts can reinstate the leave. I'm saying immediately they don't have to pay for leave they don't have, they make them take leave, they don't have to pay their salary if they're not coming in. If you're not producing, you don't get paid.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
just because I'm not bouncing off the walls right now over this, don't misunderstand. This whole conversation is very
Well, I know
hard
you
for me
hate
to
all this.
understand and palate. Just,
I know. No, I can see the hate in your eyes. I get it.
no, it's not hate. I love you, but I'm just,
I get it.
to try to help you on this.
It's
I
hard for
don't-
me to understand I
Thank
guess
you.
I don't understand it from this perspective, and maybe we can come back to it later, but I'm in an unsafe environment. We're in this, again, catastrophic situation. I call somebody and they come out in 24 hours, and then I've got to wait for 7 months for you to decide it was unsafe. I don't even get that. Like, you should be able to tell me in an hour or so, is it unsafe or not?
Who's the you?
I have to take off and not come into work and then go to court to get my time back. We have to work with a sense of urgency. With
Most made it very clear. Most made it very clear that that's what they do, that they go up there and immediately identify the situation, and a vast majority of their job is discussing with the person who filed the complaint, yes, it's safe to go back to work, here's why, or this was remedied, or no, this is not a danger, that parking garage, there's no cars running, therefore you're not going to get carbon monoxide pollution. That was the example.
Okay, so if Moshe said it's unsafe, then why would I have to go back and ask for my leave? If they said it's unsafe, does that mean I don't come?
Unless we could do the corollary of, if you're not working that day and my building burns down, you don't come in, do you still get paid?
Well, no, you don't, because you didn't come in.
Exactly. You didn't come in, you couldn't come in. Same thing would apply.
Well, I mean, some of these things may not take the 7 months. It's,
Not-
sort of, I mean,
Right.
it may not be a 7-month investigation, because what it talks about when they're going to court is that, the commissioner doesn't have the authority to order the employer to do anything. You're going to need a court to do it. And now the employer may well do these voluntarily. If, Moshe comes in and says, employee is right, you should have done X, Y, and Z. And if you don't comply, then we are going to determine there's a violation. And if you still don't comply, then we're going to institute the action where we file with the court to say that you're in violation. And then there are, additional penalties that go forward,
Correct.
reinstating the employee. I mean, again, in a health emergency, I think these things would be addressed pretty quickly. Which is the
No.
general idea, and no employer necessarily wants them to be taken to court by the commission.
No, not at all.
Now,
Madam
one of the
Chair,
questions, right quick. Laura also wanted to ask in this section, when we talk about investigation, we've never really discussed this, but Moshe brought it up. Where does the help, because this is a catastrophic public health crisis. what part is the health department going to play in these investigations? As of now, we've left them totally out of it, but I don't know if we need to bring, I don't know if most hasn't really brought them in, but I do believe in each of these areas, we haven't even, that's a bridge for you and I to talk about, I guess, maybe with the vice chair. We've got to find a place for the health department because they're the more immediate actors. They're the ones that can immediately remedy, control, and shut down, evacuate if they need to, that most can't. And we've yet to really bring them into the idea behind this bill.
So I guess I think what the department would say is that they feel the governor has the authority, as he did in this case, to issue an executive order that requires or authorizes local health departments to take certain actions that they can't otherwise without the executive order. It's a policy decision for you all to make whether you feel that's adequate. To let it be a case-by-case executive determination, because the committee did receive testimony this year, particularly on House Bill 124, Delegate Valderrama's bill, about some potential lapses in state oversight enforcement authority, however you want to describe it. So
and I also think that because with the health department, do they have a complaint mechanism for people that are violating any health codes? And I know they do. And are we, when it comes to retaliation, are we protecting those complaints as well? Are we pushing out that they should go to either MOSH or the health department as one of the people? I would assume that we at least would tie them into people you would complain to, because this is a public health emergency. I would think that they would also be part of the investigation and resolution.
I think the language here actually does say basically the person can complain to different agencies here. So as part of when, let's see, what you see in subsection B here, an essential worker has the right to refuse to perform an assigned task if you go down to 2, the condition causing the apprehension of death or injury, blah, blah, blah. There's real danger, serious injury, and then down in 2 below, there's insufficient time due to the urgency of the situation to limit the danger by resorting to regular enforcement channels with MOSH or seeking the assistance of another public agency which has responsibility in the field of safety and health. So that would be local health department potentially.
And I didn't know if we wanted to highlight or bring the health department in more than just they're very collaterally brought in. That's fine. That's for now. I just believe that
this is how it appears in Comar.
Laura, before I say this, and I think you just answered it. This is regulation right now. Is that correct?
Yes.
So yeah. Mr. Chairman, I'm just going to make a generic statement that there is no way we're ever going to be able to put in statute and do it in a way that's going to satisfy the business interest and the worker interest, like by taking the flexibility of this department, which is by definition what regulation is. It's and then turn it into statute that's, and I've used this phrase before, but unyielding statute that these departments are going to have to play by. This was a rabbit hole I did not expect to see us go down, but we are definitely down in a rabbit hole right now.
And which rabbit hole?
The one where you're taking MOSH's regulations and making it statute.
Well,
that's my 2 cents.
Actually, let me back up a little. So there are some parts of this section that are in statute and some that are in regulation. The part that's in statute is the anti-retaliation provisions. So let's see, right here, what's in C and D about what we were just discussing about sort of filing the action and the written complaint and the timelines of 7 days. That's in statute.
That's already in statute, Laura?
Yeah, but
that's in statute.
But Laura, what I'm saying is let the department work informally. Let the department work informally and through regulation, not through statute. What you're saying is the retaliation's in place because an elected official like me wanted to make sure we had retaliation statute, not regulation. We wanted to direct the department. I'm saying give the department the needed flexibility, especially under health emergency.
If you look at most of this, I believe we've been fairly loose on, we've referred to either the department's own rules or, we've been very loose on, we haven't prescribed them to do much of anything thus far. And again, the only thing we prescribed them to do is what they already do, and it's already under their own legislation. So, again, but duly noted, because I know how you feel about this. So, yeah, that's fine. I get it. I just wanted to, so when it comes to the health department, you're saying that, Laura, you think that's sufficiently covered as far, so we don't have to tell the health department to investigate public health safety or public.
I don't think there's anything precluding you from being more specific, prescriptive, whatever, about like additional enforcement authority. But I'm telling you that the way this is drafted right now, it says that a worker may, that's in the part of the bill that talks about what a worker has to do in order to have the right to refuse. And so
Yeah, I
it's
saw
saying
it.
that you have the right to refuse if there's not sufficient time to, due to the urgency of the situation, to eliminate the issue by calling the Department of Health.
Right. That's like the only place
It's not setting out any specific enforcement authority for health
Okay,
departments though.
well, that's something that we'll come back and revisit if we need to involve the health department further, because that was pretty much a negative that they were talking about, if you can't go to the Department of Health. But again, I want to keep moving on because I know we have a lot to do. Did we cover
May I
this?
ask a question in that investigation department? Are there certain jurisdictions that the Department of Health can go into? Like, could I have been at the poultry manufacturer and say, I want to call Department of Health versus Mosh?
Well, the Department of Health, to my understanding, can go down and immediately shut them down.
So the Department of Health, that's my question. Department of Health has jurisdiction over any sort of facility.
If you're giving out any
Hospital or
Well,
medical or health
it's not any facility. You have to be doing like food stuff, ice or something like that. However, in a health emergency, that's what I wanted to get to, because like the Department of Health has no reason to be on a bus. There's nothing about a bus that you should be on the Department of Health in a regular setting. There's no food, there's no water, there's no reason they should be interfering. However, I would think that in a COVID setting, you could call the Department of Health for unsafe work environment because you don't have masks, that you're not blocked off. There are people coughing on the bus because it's a public health emergency.
That's my question. That's what I'm saying. Can you do that? Is that
Well, no,
jurisdiction to do that?
The only thing I want to add is it sounded like in this case, the governor had issued the executive order that gave additional enforcement authority to local health departments, but that's not an all the time thing. So if you wanted for a future emergency to be more
Yes.
specific about, and
Okay, that's what I'm trying to get clarity on. Thank you.
and I would like that. I don't know if it's unnecessary, but I personally would like this because I want them to have the ability to go on the bus. In fact, I'd rather them for any public health emergency call the health department instead of Mosh, because they would be
That's what I'm trying to get to. I want
And I
them to
got you.
call somebody who can act.
right, and who can act immediately, because like Mosh said, they can't shut anybody down. They can't evacuate, but the health department can. And they
well,
can,
if you gave them the authority, they could.
huh?
If
Well-
you gave them the authority in this bill, you could.
Well, that's, you know where we're going, right?
So we're gonna shut down Chris Adams' construction site because we calling in the health department.
Right, which normally they wouldn't be out there, but it matters when it comes to public health safety. I would think that they should be involved in Chris Adams' construction site if, he's making everybody wear the same pair of gloves.
But you can
So-
also tie those emergency powers to the emergency declaration.
Right, and so that's how they are. Currently, it's not in there, so we would assume it's tied to the emergency powers, right? Remember,
Just Bob, can I just say, yeah, go ahead.
because I know you get ready to throw me a curveball, so just give me a second. So my point was, in drafting this entire piece of legislation, we have to figure out where we fit in. We want to make sure that in the second coming of COVID, that without doubt, the health department will have these powers, or do we want to rely on the governor? I know for certain set things like scope, we want to define scope. We're not going to wait for the governor. For other things, we've been, a little, more even-handed. I personally believe this is something we might want to ourselves step in and make sure that the health department in a public safety or catastrophic health crisis has the
Okay.
And that's
Okay.
my feeling. I know Chris disagrees 1,000%, but I just think they're the ones who can immediately go in and deal with this. And it's, yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Okay.
I know you have something evil.
I do. I do. We are so around the axle right now. All right. So back when the pandemic started in the construction industry, along with the governor, there were work groups. They talked about how we're going to create safe work environments. It was done on the fly, but it was very responsive and to the benefit of the worker. It was all handled informally with industry and with government. And what our fear was in construction, I'm just using it as an example, we could be talking about food processing or whatever, but the last thing we want is to have a job site get shut down. I mean, there was a real world example that I have on a project that we were on, and you got a number of workers working on the job site. So how do we work together in a harmonious fashion and get the job done? And so we did that. I mean, I spent more time in the work group talking about this, but don't underestimate the ability of industry to defend their position for fear of having Mosh come around and start laying the band hammer on a job site. So keep that in mind.
I get it. But as Delegate Queen pointed out, we want to make sure that individuals, I want to make sure a complaint is dealt with immediately. I want the agency who can go out there and it sounds like more and more that Mosh may not be that agency. We can adopt what they're talking about, but it sounds like in a health crisis that it would be the health department that we would want responding to all these complaints, and we would want in taking these complaints in. And again, I know I'm going a little bit off the bounds, but this is one of the things that was sticking in my head yesterday when I was reading this, is by Mosh's own declaration, they really can't do anything quick without going to court. And so all they can do if they get there, I guess, and they see an issue, is call the health department.
But you could give them the authority to do more.
Mhm.
Most authority to do more, but the health department already has that authority.
Because the governor gave it to the health departments in the executive order. You could
Well, they are-
put it in statute that, I mean, we asked the department directly, do you have a need for more sort of enforcement tools? And they've kind of responded in writing and said no.
No.
But that's up for you all to decide whether you think that's appropriate or not.
All right, guys. I do believe we need to find a way to make sure that these complaints are responded to immediately. If that means empowering Mosh, if that means ensuring that the health department is involved, I don't think we can leave that blank. So we can come back to that, Laura. Make sure you annotate something on there so we don't mess that up, because we do need to figure that one out.
We're annotating just about everything.
Everything. Hey, that's the great thing about having Chris and Seth here. This is awesome.
Okay. The next section, 316.05, is just the disease mitigation steps. So I think there was discussion about taking out the evacuation of the work site. So
Yeah.
this section says that if the employer has to take proactive steps to minimize transmission, including informing workers when they may have been exposed.
Yeah. All right.
And then this is about the testing costs. So the bill had said the employer has to pay all costs associated with testing. And so this instead says that there's the employer's not subject to that requirement if the worker is able to get testing free of charge.
And the question I have with all costs associated, so if decides, the way I read this, if the employee decides to take 2 hours off to go get tested, the employer has to pay him for that, because that's a cost associated with getting tested. I don't know. I don't believe that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it could be interpreted
Yeah, I
more
don't believe that was
broadly
our intent.
perhaps than just covering the cost of the
That's
test
correct.
itself.
And I don't believe that was the intent.
Should it be uninsured cost?
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, thank you.
If it's, if it's covered by insurance, but there's a copay or,
Copay, yeah. And,
that's what maybe the employer, if we're going, that's what I'd hook them on. But, I think the employee should use their health insurance, or as we found so many places, it was free.
yeah, that's.
But at least
But I know the way it's
covered.
written.
Yeah.
I know it's written that they don't have to pay, obviously, if it was free, but It doesn't
But
require that.
uninsured, yeah.
Yeah,
Or
but it doesn't require them to
costs
use their
not covered by
insurance.
insurance, right?
Yeah,
And for some people, that might be the entire cost, but if you've got, to
right,
use it.
right.
And that's not specific to a group health plan. It's just provided by the employer, just any insurance that the person has.
Any
If this
insurance that
person
the
has
person
insurance,
has, yes,
You should try and mitigate any cost.
right.
And in doing that mitigation, CT, I think it would be important to outline in the bill that the person should seek out free testing first, if available.
Well, this says if an essential worker is able to obtain testing free of charge. So if there's the ability for them to obtain it
Mhm.
free of charge, then the employer wouldn't be subject to the
Right.
requirement.
Okay.
Yeah,
And that's statewide?
that's how we be writing it.
Excellent.
We're not gonna make this a local bill.
Right, I understand. I'm just making sure it's clear there.
Okay.
So Delegate Wilson, were you suggesting a change where it says pay all costs associated with the testing?
Yes.
Instead, just say shall pay for the cost of the test?
Yes, I don't think that they should be required to pay, because again, you can also go before you get to work. You can go after you leave. There's plenty of times you can go. And if they say, well, I gotta leave now because I want to.
Okay. And then this section here just is not changed in the reprint. It requires the Department of Health to the employer to report to the Department of Health positive test results and include certain information, and then requires the department to collect the results, categorize it, and make it available to the public.
And I just want to make this very clear in this section, because we talk in later sections about HIPAA and worrying about, personal information. In a health crisis, that's not a protection. In health crisis, if you're COVID positive, you have to let them know. And we don't want to, and I want to make sure that there's no confusion that in a public health crisis that we get to argue, well, I don't want to tell somebody my personal medical history. Well, then you don't get to take any leave, because we want to make it public policy than a public health crisis that you let them know if you're positive or you're negative, so we can get a grip on this. And that's why, because it was laid out here about the reporting mechanism. In order for this reporting mechanism to work, they do have to disclose to their employer the results of their tests. Correct, Laura?
Mm-hmm.
You weren't even paying attention. I see.
I
that.
wasn't paying attention.
My wife does that to me all the time, bro.
But he was right. I was paying attention.
It sounded right.
Go ahead. That was hilarious. All right. All right, go to the next slide.
All right, this is the leave section of the bill. So the subcommittee, I think, had discussed taking out bereavement leave, so that's struck.
Because we passed a bill about it, right?
Yep.
The bill that the
Allowed you
committee,
to-
go
it
ahead.
allowed you to use your Maryland family, whatever, to leave to.
Right.
No,
No?
No,
What did it do?
no.
the bill amends the Flexible Leave Act, which is
Right.
a separate provision of law that says an employer has to let you use paid leave that you earn for yourself to care for a family member. So like if you're,
That's what I said.
no, it's not the Healthy Working Family Act. It's not sick leave. It's just, if you have paid leave, you can use it for
Right.
certain purposes.
Hey, to the title.
And
I
so
get it.
what the bill said was you could use your paid leave for bereavement. And it's
Okay.
only for employers with 15 or more employees.
Right,
That's what the bill said.
right.
So this is the definition of family member that's in the Healthy Working Families Act.
Mhm.
That's where I come in and ask whether or not all this is stackable federally.
Oh, no. And we get to determine if we want them to use
Yeah,
regular leave or at least sick leave, their earned sick leave, prior to any leave that we decide we want to give the employees. Yes, those are things we get to discuss.
mhm.
Which I think it's going to be better to discuss when you've got my amendment in front of you. I mean,
I
I
thought this incorporated her.
respectfully disagree with the chair that, you need to use the leave you've earned for that 5 days for this. But again, I think that's a discussion for maybe the next meeting.
Right. And
It's
that's
something we have to talk about.
Right,
yes.
we're just briefly covering this because this was the
Yes.
crux of what I thought we'd be fighting about today. And Chris said I was wrong. So we will have to come back, but
Yeah, there's
Okay.
plenty of fighting me left for probably Friday on this.
Ray, go ahead. All right, go ahead, Laura.
I think the subcommittee had discussed limiting it from 14 days to 40 hours. So that's what this reprint does.
Mhm.
And then the vice chair's bill and amendment had 9 different reasons why a worker could use the leave. So those are brought over here.
Right, now, so Madam Vice Chair, because you're talking about your bill is incorporated in
Not
Yeah.
completely.
Not
some of
completely.
it, no, some of it.
Yeah, I know.
But I wanted to ask about section 2, allowing essential workers use the health leave. One of the things, experiencing symptoms associated with communicable disease. And I guess, wouldn't we want them to just go get tested?
Well, yeah,
So I don't want you to not get tested and use all your leave.
right. No, I agree. You should get tested. If you're diagnosed, you're experiencing symptoms and are waiting on a test, or you're
Waiting on a test.
somewhere in the beginning, put
Yeah.
in that you go get a test.
Yeah,
If experiencing symptoms, you must get a test.
right.
But to be honest, if you're experiencing symptoms, I don't know if I want you in my workplace.
Oh, no, I don't disagree, but also, there is right now, if I have a cold, people are gonna look at me crazy because the cold.
no,
is
I
like
agree.
COVID. So, and
So if you're experiencing symptoms associated with the communicative that disease, you have to go get tested.
right, if we could find a way to make
Follow
that
the-
available,
And as
Follow the recommendations of whoever. Yeah.
awaiting the results of a test, yeah.
Yeah.
And I know we really start jumping into the woods when we talk about caring for family members, or basically what I thought it gets really deep is when they start talking about if employment closes, you take leave. So like an employer is told he can't stay open, then you also get to take your sick leave. So he has to pay you, in addition to your regular leave and your family medical leave, you get to take.
Oh, yeah, those are the things we have to
Right,
walk through. I agree.
right. We don't have to walk through all today.
So how much time, just out of curiosity, based on those 3 types of leave you just outlined, if we were to adopt all that, how much time cumulatively, if I said that right?
I think it's like 72 days total.
What?
What?
Nothing.
Just gonna say, okay.
I wouldn't be shocked, but
I
yes.
might be way out to the left
Notice-
somewhere, but I
notice
don't
I
think I'm
just
that
looked-
far out.
Notice I
So
just
we-
looked at you stoically
Right.
because
Yes,
We
you
are
did.
Maryland.
Thank you so
We are
much.
Maryland. This is how we do it. But I don't
Right.
have that number. I'm sure Laura can get it to us by next time.
Wait, what are you talking about?
She wants
So-
to, he
I
wants to know how
think
many
it's the
days you can
definite,
earn.
yeah. Now, what we'll have to talk about is the definition. Obviously, what is in my amendment talks about 14 days because that is what the CDC now requires. What I have sort of talked to the advocates about, and I've got some language that they've sent me today too, to talk about, it's sort of like whatever the current recommendation is. I mean, if the CDC, which has gone back and forth, or the World Health Organization, whatever, at one, they're back to 14 days, I think, but there was a point where it was 7 days and it was 10 days.
Yep.
And I think that's what they're trying to protect, is that if someone's working in an environment in a catastrophic public health emergency, they're in close contact, how do we make sure those people aren't communicating the disease?
And as that changes, that should be announced by the governor and the head of the agencies that are overseeing.
I'm okay with something like that.
Employers are clear. Is that
Well,
where
it's
we're
that-
going?
And the thing isn't really that. I don't think anybody disagrees with the intent. It's,
Mhm.
I brought up to the chairman, I said, this is a great idea. And in our bill, let's put in that any and all leave given out for COVID should be reimbursed by the state. Now,
Right.
I'm crazy.
I'm okay.
See, I think that's a great idea because that's putting your money where your mouth is.
Yeah, I
Well,
agree.
that's because we got federal dollars too. So we can
Well-
No, this is not this time. Maybe next time. So I don't want to get confused what we have. So, but I still think if we're going to make our employees do this, which is the safest way, then we need to make sure the state reimburses them dollar for dollar for the leave that they give, like we did the FFRC. Chris, you look like you have something important to say.
Mr. Chairman, there is no way that the state can afford what the federal government did for paid leave. So our company actually had a few employees that took time off. It's a tax credit against your payroll taxes. The state of Maryland having to backfill the private employers. Can I just say one other thing about this? The stackable component of leave between federal and state is not something I think we can easily resolve. And just this other thing about the having a test taken, the state of Maryland, I don't think gets to choose when and how we violate federal preemption. So HIPAA is HIPAA. Before COVID, during COVID, and after COVID, I don't see how we get around. I mean, we've glossed over that, but we can't regulate or put in.
You most assuredly, as an employer, can ask the results of a COVID test, because if somebody's exposed to COVID, they need to, that's the only way we trace, and that's the only way to let everybody in your office get tested. We need to find the law then, because I doubt you can go get a COVID test and not tell your employer anything if you have positive. I bet he can ask that question.
Well, I don't think there probably is a law. I'd like to see.
I know, I'd like to see it. I mean, we'd have to look at sort of what some of the things they've done with AIDS. I mean,
Yeah.
that's where this question has often come up, is,
AIDS isn't the,
public
AIDS
health-
is not the
that's not as near as
example.
communicable.
No,
Yeah.
no, but
AIDS is not
there's
the
a lot
example,
of
but the
case
example you
law.
need to look at is tuberculosis. There are things you have
Okay.
to do to report about tuberculosis. Look at that.
And that's what I was saying. There are specific things that you have to report because of the detriment of society. So although you have your personal health protections, they don't supersede that of, the greater good. I thought I'd use that word for you, Seth.
So if I demand the information and the employee doesn't give it to me, then what?
We'll have to look. I would think that I don't know. Like I said, I don't know, but
Okay.
I can't imagine it's any other way. So again, I'm just going on general policy that if the employee doesn't want to give me, that means I have to stop what I'm doing and tell all of my employees that they have to immediately go get tested and close my thing down because I have to assume that they're positive. That can't possibly be good public policy, Seth. So, yeah, so we're going through, I don't know, I was distracted. Where are we at, Laura?
We were walking through the different reasons that someone could use the leave.
Oh, Christ.
So,
Right, but I didn't want to say, the chairman would kill me from just what Chris said, but to me, that's the only way this 14 days is sustainable, is if we get some kind of tax credit or something from the state. Otherwise, financially, I don't know how it would be sustainable. And I don't think the chairman would let us get a bill out with that on it. Madam Vice Chair, if you can work your magic, that would be great. That would solve a whole bunch of problems with everybody if we could find a way to get 14 days or even 5 days of paid sick leave that would be,
Okay.
the government.
Okay.
Go ahead, Laura. Waiting on you.
okay. So do you want me to it's on screen. Does anyone want to just say if there's anything they want to discuss with the group?
Remember, we're going to come back and to discuss this.
Yeah, we are going to have to do that. So.
Yeah.
I don't want to get Chris started again.
Are we meeting tomorrow? Because we got that training.
No, because we have that training.
All right.
What training?
For
Anti-harassment.
Anti-harassment.
Oh,
training.
I already had mine.
I forgot.
I told you should do yours on Saturday.
Bite your tongue.
Well, I was all signed up and everything.
So if we don't have any questions about this beautiful leave section,
I think that there's.
I think we
beyond
just
the
have
leave-
to address it like in totality. So just make sure it reads that, looks at the amendment that is in the one that says Dumay amendment,
please.
broader discussion.
And you've sent all the amendments out, right, Laura?
Mhm.
She did.
Okay, guys.
Yeah.
We
So,
might meet
Go ahead.
we might be meeting on Monday for subcommittee. I know we meet to vote. Are we meeting this Monday to vote? We
For
know,
full committee? I'm not sure. I mean, I would
don't know.
assume the committee's probably going to be voting every day or every other day.
and here's the thing, guys, like I would like to do this on Friday. However, I've heard rumor that we may have a day off on Friday. Nothing worse than having a day off and having to do a damn subcommittee. So I've seen these days off pop up out of the blue,
Days off.
day offs. I don't know.
I just don't believe that.
I don't
Right.
either.
I mean, not for you.
Although they
You're-
did Tuesday.
Yeah,
There's
that's
not a
what I'm
whole heck
saying.
of a lot on the calendar.
And I've heard that they don't have a lot on the calendar, which is why I'm hesitant about, making anybody but Laura work on Friday. So that's why we're gonna wait. Again, the chairman is still not cracking the whip on this.
No, I think he is.
Well, I mean, it's a gentle beating. We can take it. And I think by next week, by the end of the week, at least we can have something done. The biggest thing obviously is going to be, well, all the other crap you guys pointed out, but the sick leave component. I believe if Madam Vice Chair could work her magic and get this paid for, I think that wouldn't even be an issue. I don't think anybody really stumble on that. However we could do it, I just think that as a state, we should put our money where our mouth is. If we think this is important with that, the Bible says, follow your treasure and you'll find your heart. It's that time.
I agree.
So,
The other thing I think we should discuss on leave is whether you want that to be prospective from, this is a big, a lot of the advocates
Yeah,
on,
the answer is yes. It's got to be perspective.
so it would not need to be provided during the current pandemic. It would be for future.
From the outset, I gotta say, from everyone here on this Zoom meeting, that's the interpretation of this bill, to me.
what?
I asked definitively,
Well, here's the problem, guys. If this bill passes.
and I was told, oh yeah, it's perspective.
But perspective doesn't mean not this pandemic.
Well, it was prospective.
I know, and that's why I was asking, because we would still be under the executive order when this bill comes.
Mhm.
Why I was asking, CT.
Well,
It's not-
just to sort of be clear, the whole conversation and bill hearings and all of that about retroactivity was specifically about hazard pay. Because the
Right.
bill has a provision that's a little confusing about how that would be interpreted for this current pandemic, but we need to be clear if the bill is going to have this leave requirement, what your intent is, for the current pandemic. So if
Without
you-
a doubt, because some of these things we do want as soon as possible.
Like what?
Like making sure that PPP is provided, the retaliation section, protecting your employees, that's something I'd like to have now
Okay.
in this pandemic. But,
I'm just asking, I'm just getting a feel for where you're going.
no, I get you. That's an excellent question.
All right, businesses are going to say we're struggling to survive as it is, and they'd be right.
CT's gonna say, don't
Recommendation
care.
would be respectfully, if you're going to pass this law, CT, and I do hope it's an if, that it have some connection to the existing emergency order by the governor, and that it becomes effective after that executive order is rescinded.
And that's the question we probably need to go back to the leadership and the chairman about. And I,
Mhm.
1,000%, I totally understand. And again, I'm trying to cut out as much that would kill these small businesses that are barely making it back now anyway. Okay, I really am. A lot of these things, they shouldn't cost that much money. Besides maybe paying for the test. We haven't discussed the leave yet, and we haven't gotten any word from the hierarchy as far as the $3 an hour hazards pay. So,
Well, and the thing is, like you said yourself, I mean, we're trying to plan for the next pandemic. We have no idea what the hell people would be for that, if any.
and so that's why I also try to keep this in much in mind of what I would like to see in October if this is still going on.
Mhm.
Is this emergency legislation?
Mhm.
It is. So that kind of lets you know, there's no point in having emergency legislation and not have it, impacting immediately.
Well, the legislation's drastically changed also too, when you cut out the $3 an hour pay and added vehicles for leave and other amendments. And I mean,
Leave was already in there, Turkey.
well, we folded in the Dumais amendments.
Well,
They haven't been
Mr.
accepted yet. We just have to talk them through.
Well,
Mr. Chairman,
that's
just an
true.
observation on this emergency thing. Goal I talked about in Chamber of Commerce's last fall. Just remember that the idea that we're passing an emergency, does it really need to be an emergency bill? We're now into the month of, late March. When this bill was first conceived, we're surely in a different spot than we were then. Just, I would not be constrained by the idea that we have an emergency bill in front of us. We could.
Oh, I'm not constrained by that, but I want to go, that to me is worst case scenario. Okay. And I'd rather prepare for war and have peace happen and prepare for peace and have war happen. So if that's worst case scenario, I'd like to play off of that until we're told it's not an emergency bill, because the impact is drastically different if this is for the next pandemic. If we know as soon as this kicks in, there's possibly some leave that people are going to have to use. That's a huge difference, Chris. So I appreciate that, but I don't know yet. And Laura, we probably really need to find that out, since it is an emergency bill.
Find out what?
And what the goal of leadership is.
What do you mean? I mean, so the bill was introduced as an emergency bill with the intent of applying in the current pandemic.
This one.
But it's a policy decision for you all to make, whether that's your intent, whether you want some requirements or all requirements to apply now, or if it would only be for the future.
Well, listen, guys, you hear Laura's tone. She's getting fed up with us. So I think we're going to.
I know, I like it. I've never seen.
Ooh, I was like, I don't like that tone.
Could I ask a question?
Yes, Delegate Chi.
So if we step away from all the details that we have just discussed, and that we will come back to, my general question is, what kind of data so far a year into the pandemic that we have collected that could inform what kind of industry practices that need to be fixed? What are the prevalent issues and abuses and violations of laws and all of that? How much information do we even have to make informed policy decisions that could stay for perpetuity? Of course, we will always come back every January to fix and tweak, but it sends a tone, sets a tone and sends a message, right? So I do think it takes time. I would rather we work diligently. I don't mind working on Friday or weekend just to hash it out. But if we drop it 3 days later, come back, we forget what we discussed and have to pick up all over again, you know?
Okay.
I would rather see more intensity and focused effort. I thought there was a work group, but it seemed like the work group did not meet much other than a total of 6 hours of discussion on camera. So I don't know. I'm
Those
sorry
recommendations.
if I make you feel bad. I
don't disagree.
You guys didn't work, but you know what?
And
Misspeaking, but you know my intention is there's still a lot of details we don't know.
Okay, so good point, Lily. Or Delegate Chi. I don't mind hurting Chris's feelings, but I do think that maybe we do need to meet Friday. I would have again met tomorrow, except for we have that training.
What time is the training tomorrow?
3 to 5.
3 to 5.
Oh, I just went on the link. That's all filled up. I got to do it Saturday.
Are you
I don't know
serious?
how you fill up a Zoom training, but okay.
Well, I'm signed up. So, and I
Yeah,
have.
I'm just telling you, so don't be surprised if you know we try to meet on Saturday. You might get 1 or 2 members that say, "Hey, I can't.
We're not going to meet on Saturday, man. All right.
Okay.
Well, I was trying to think if you wanted to meet after the floor session before bill hearings. I don't even know if we actually have bill hearings tomorrow.
We do, but there are 2 departmentals. It'll be 10 minutes. The bill hearing tomorrow will be 10 minutes, if that.
So do you want to meet after the bill hearings tomorrow?
Okay, we're done by 2. We'd have an hour before.
Well, I just don't know what time we're getting off the floor. That's what I'm saying. I would love to meet. And again, normally we'd make this call on the fly, guys.
Mhm.
That's a hard
Guys,
stop. though.
Be ready.
That's a hard stop.
We still do that.
Yeah,
So
now you can.
we can make that call, okay? And I'll have Derek. We'll make that call because best case scenario, we would be doing that right after the floor, okay? If we got off
Yeah,
today, we do it after the floor, and we could meet again after the committee. Because Lily is right. We've gone a long way. I don't want to peter out now or get distracted by these 2 evil Republicans, and just have nothing as a war.
Just for the record, this Republican's very focused on and very intense on this particular
I
bill.
can tell. We all know. So no, and we appreciate all your input, guys. We'll try and do that. I'll make an announcement either on the floor, or I don't think they let us do that. We'll figure it out. All right. Or we'll send a text out. Be ready to meet tomorrow after the floor. Okay. And if it gets too late, we might send a cancel notice out. Other than that, we'll meet tomorrow after the floor. Is everybody okay with that?
Sure.
Outstanding. Okay. Thank you guys very much. I feel like we've gone back a few steps, but hopefully we'll get this taken.
No, I think we move forward.
No, we're doing fine.
Absolutely.
Thank you guys very much. And